Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do something different. We're going to talk about an airline. Now, if you know me, you know that I don't really talk about airlines. I have a few videos on the history of a couple of airlines like Air India and British Airways, but those videos are more about aviation history than they are about the history of the airline itself. So today, we're going to do a full history of one of the world's most iconic airlines, Singapore Airlines, from its formation in 1972 to the year 2000. The first 30 years of the airline will cover what they were doing before they started flying 777s, A380s and other modern jets that we're used to seeing them fly today. It's going to be a quick video because, well, there's not much to cover about their early years. But with that said, let's jump into it. Singapore Airlines was formed in 1972 after the split between Malaysia and Singapore. At the time, Malaysia was known as Malaya, and they had a flag carrier called Malaysia-Singapore Airlines. After the split, Singapore needed their own flag carrier, so they split up MSA and created two separate airlines, Malaysia Airlines and Singapore Airlines. SIA was officially incorporated on May 7, 1972, with an authorized share capital of 10 million Singapore dollars. Their initial fleet consisted of 4 Boeing 737s and 1 Boeing 707. On October 1972, Singapore Airlines launched its first flight from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Jakarta, and Bangkok. Within a few months of operations, the airline realized that they needed more aircraft, so they went out and bought 3 more 737s, a DC-8 and a 707-300C, bringing their total fleet size to 9 aircraft. In 1973, they continued their expansion by starting new routes to Manila, Dhaka, Colombo, and Mumbai. In 1975, Singapore Airlines began the process of becoming the luxury airline that we know today. They started offering direct flights to Europe and North America. They offered non-stop service to Frankfurt and Zurich in Switzerland, and also began non-stop service to Los Angeles in the United States. This was a big deal at the time because before then, passengers had to travel via planes that refueled multiple times. So this made getting to Europe and North America from Southeast Asia much easier. Also, in 1975, they started using the now iconic Singapore Girl as a brand ambassador. She has become one of the most recognizable figures in the airline industry over the years. In 1976, the airline placed one of the largest orders for Boeing aircraft in history. At the time, the order for 15 Boeing 747s was worth $1.2 billion. These 747s allowed them to increase frequency to their existing long-haul destinations, while opening up new routes to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth in Australia, and to Tokyo and Osaka in Japan. With the delivery of the 747s, the airline decided to adopt the same high levels of service on their 737s as they did on their 747s. This included table service for all meals, instead of the usual fast food style service that was common on short-haul flights at the time. They also provided doors on all their 737s. Although they were an older design, the 737-200C was perfect for the routes that Singapore Airlines flew at the time, and these aircraft turned out to be quite popular. The airline ended up buying a further 10 examples, bringing their total number of 737s up to 37. By the end of the 1970s, Singapore Airlines had become a major international airline with 37 737s, 15 747s, and a good network throughout Asia, Europe, and North America. In 1980, Singapore Airlines became the launch customer for the brand new P and W-powered McDonnell Douglas DC-1030. This would eventually replace the 747 as their long-haul jet. Eventually, they operated 11 of these aircraft in a 2-class configuration. The DC-10 gave Singapore Airlines the range and reliability that they needed to continue expanding. During the next decade, they expanded to destinations throughout the Middle East, Africa, and the Indian subcontinent. The airline also opened their first lounges at Changi Airport and in Frankfurt. In 1981, Singapore Airlines introduced in-flight telephones on board their 747s. These were satellite-based and incredibly expensive at the time, but this was the first time that passengers could use telephones in the sky. The following year, in 1982, Singapore Airlines brought out their low-cost subsidiary airline called Tradewinds. This was initially set up to serve secondary airports in Australia and New Zealand. However, the airline wasn't very successful, so in 1987, the airline was merged back into Singapore Airlines. In 1986, Singapore Airlines got another new jet to add to their fleet. In 1988, Singapore Airlines purchased 15% of their competitor, Malaysia Airlines. This investment didn't last long though, and they sold off their stake in 1993. Also in 1989, they became the first airline in the world to put personal entertainment screens on every seat in every class of their 747s. This was a massive hit with passengers and helped them stand out even more from the competition. As the Cold War came to an end and the Soviet Union fell apart, Singapore Airlines was one of the first Western airlines to see opportunities in Russia. They were one of the first airlines to start flying to Russia and also one of the first to start flying over the North Pole to reduce travel time to Europe. In the early 1990s, Singapore Airlines had an identity crisis. They were an Asian airline trying to figure out how they could differentiate themselves from their competitors, like Malaysian Airlines and Thai Airways, who were charging lower prices. They came up with two solutions. The first one was to focus on being a luxury airline with exceptional service. The second solution was to invest in newer, more modern aircraft. Starting in 1992, Singapore Airlines took delivery of the new Boeing 747-400. These 747s featured the new wing design and high bypass engines, which reduced fuel consumption and improved efficiency. They also had the new interiors and updated systems. Singapore Airlines liked these new 747s so much that they ordered the jumbo version of the 747-400D. These 747s were known as the megatops because they had a false roof, giving them the appearance of having a bigger cabin than they actually did. Despite the criticism, these are still great aircraft and are perfect for long-haul flights. They can carry 467 passengers in a single-class layout. The next aircraft that Singapore Airlines took delivery of was the Airbus A330-300. The A330 was perfect for the airline because it was cheaper to operate than the 747 and could fly medium-haul routes. Initially, the airline operated 10 A330-300s in a two-class configuration. However, they later converted many of these aircraft into a three-class configuration with first, business, and economy. Also in 1992, Singapore Airlines made the bold move of relocating their headquarters from its original location in the basement of the One Raffles Place building to a new office at 100 Airport Boulevard near Changi International Airport. This move made it easier for staff working at the airport to come into work, and the move was very successful. With the introduction of the A330 and 747-400, Singapore Airlines started focusing more on their business model and started implementing changes that would make the airline the world-renowned luxury airline that we know today. The airline implemented policies that shaped their culture, such as hiring only the best people, empowering employees to solve problems, and continually improving their product and services. They also started to expand again, this time to Latin America, opening routes to Mexico City and São Paulo in Brazil. By the year 2000, Singapore Airlines had become one of the world's best airlines. They had a reputation for being one of the best airlines in the world for service, safety, and innovation. They were considered to be the benchmark for other airlines to follow. And that's pretty much everything that happened with the airline until 2000. What do you think? What are your favorite things about Singapore Airlines? Let me know in the comments below. And stay tuned for more videos about the world's best airlines.